Welcome back to the unpopular opinion becoming popular. My name is Yana the Heretic, and on my channel we discuss the human design and I Ching hexagrams every 6 days, and they create an overall theme of the week. This week we have Gate 18, which is the hexagram of corruption, and it is considered the gate of correction and working on what has been spoiled. This is going to be in transit September 26th to October 2nd. Under Christ consciousness, this is in our spleen center, our intuitive center. So we're going to really feel this intuitive problem that's coming in. It is a gate that I actually have in my chart, and there's a lot of pros and cons to this gate. Obviously, it doesn't sound very good. Corruption doesn't sound great. But the potential is to have a masterpiece, to make your life a masterpiece. These are the perfectionists in life that always see the flaws in things. And on the lower aspect, it is a person that is very difficult to be around because they nitpick, they want things to be a certain way. This is really the intuitive taste that we've developed. And this really stems from how we have been conditioned by our parents. So just like, the story of Christ, or the story of God in the Bible, he seems very intense, an intense God, that says you must play this out for me to test your loyalty to him, to make sure that he's always this higher power on a pedestal, and putting you through these very painful lessons, to see how pliable you are, how obedient you are. And Christ, of course, fulfilled that duty. As the healer, he trusted, his Father. So the flip side of the story is that, Yahweh is a cruel God where, what kind of God, would make you kill your brother or your son, or sacrifice his own son, or some people devise these beliefs, and it doesn't really matter about the beliefs as much that you have personally, as much as the true story behind it all, which is our parents conditioned the fuck out of us. And I personally, looking at who I am as a person, I was raised Jehovah's Witness from a very Russian traditional family. So there was an aspect of the Russian tradition that was already strict to a very, very strict mold that was built around me. And both myself and my brother have this gate. And he's very much an adventurous soul like I am. So we definitely talk about the correction a lot in our lives because there's so much limitation and fear in the way that we were brought up. There's, the conditioning of you will go to hell, the conditioning of, you're not going to be righteous if you do this or that, to the point where I personally was afraid of lying as a kid. I would second guess my truth constantly because I was just so afraid of lying that I would, potentially ruin my chances to be with my family or go to heaven or whatever it was. But obviously the mold broke, and it broke pretty quickly. You know, I was about 14. And when I was like, yo, I'm out, you know, and shortly after that, you know, things started changing within that. But if I hadn't actually done something and said something, then potentially my parents could still be Jehovah's Witnesses, and that would be a very sad thing. It's a sad day for me, you know. But as you go down the line, you see things that are unconscious as well. They're not always so intense about the gate 18. This is, you know, on the lighter aspect of it, it's like you folding your clothes a certain way, or you cutting your hair a certain way, you know. If you iron your clothes, you know, I was raised to iron my clothes and to fold things right after, you know, so, or if your parents were messy, you know, and then you've grown up to be somebody that doesn't really understand hygiene or how to be a clean person, and your partner's doing your laundry for you, and there's this like judgment that occurs, right? So it's like, how could you not have figured this out? You're blah 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 age, you know. So this conditioning is unconscious, and until somebody like really reflects what we're doing, it's almost like impossible to always see these things within ourselves. So if you do have this gate, you develop your taste based off of conditioning, but then you're also the type of person that if you're capable of challenging fear within yourself, if you're able to alchemize the fear that has been brought upon you in your conditioned life, then you become this person who is sovereign, really, because you have to prove things to yourself. You have to experience these things for yourself. And then you become that person that is complete risk taker, who will say all of the unhinged things because you're like, no, this isn't correct. I'm not just going to sit here and nod along and pretend that, you know, I'm with you. You know, I can hear what you have to say, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to agree with you. And obviously that's how a lot of these day-to-day problems that we have are arising. There's a lot of corruption happening at this time, and the next progression of this is to not be so attached to the way that people are, you know. So if you are a very obedient person, if you really are you know, afraid for most of your life, you may not have very many moves that you've done in life. You may still live with your parents, you know. There's this overwhelming dark root to this because you may have obtained your parents' political normalities, you know, your societal cues come from your parents, whether or not your family is racist, whether or not you have complete ingrained fear to the point where you've never done anything active, or maybe you're agoraphobic. Like, there are so many things that can be heavily conditioned upon you, and it really takes a warrior to be able to break through these things. And then you become the person that challenges all authority, you know, the anarchist. That's definitely what I consider myself to be, where I just, you know, when it comes down to traditional, like, Russian males, when it comes down to dating, I had my claws out for a long time. And that is because typically when you do have this gate, your conditioning comes from the opposite sex parent, you know. In our case, me and my brother's case, it was both, you know, our parents, because they both believed in the same thing. They both had similar values, and we were so far different from those values. We had to really carve our own, and these things will be a part of our lives. We're gonna have to deal with it for the rest of our lives, and you know, there's going to be many layers of challenging authority. Sometimes you're handcuffed to a friggin', you know, chair or something, you know, if you challenge authority in this way. So, it is, it's a funny one, you know. This is the person that points out flaws, but without, you know, the harmonic gate, which is gate 58. What was that one? I think it's the gate of the joyous. Yeah, the gate of vitality. So if you don't have the harmonic, you really see the faults, but you don't really have anything to replace those things that, you know, irritate the shit out of you. This is like where you're triggered, you know. So yeah, you need the 58 in order to really see how, you know, you're going to start working with these issues to have more fun with it. You know, 58 is the joyous, which is a person that challenges authority, but they do it for fun, you know. Whereas like 18 is more of that fear that you have to break through, and, you know, really looking at all of the flaws, you know, rather than just the fun of being against authorities. So, and then the well, which is actually the next gate we have coming up, October 2nd, and the well really brings depth to the equation. It allows you to see why these roots happened for you, which, you know, I personally have this gate as well. I have the whole channel of the wavelength, and it's really like you have these cycles of deep moments where you're like, wow, okay, I see like where these roots lie, and this is how I'm going to deal with them, and I'm going to try to create solutions that are lasting for the situations that I'm in, for these triggered moments. You know, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be so overindulgent or attached to this outcome or attached to being right. So you begin to really assess things from a deeper place, and it always helps being around somebody that has the 48, especially if you have 18 or, you know, the 58. So yeah, the weird aspect to our conditioning comes from, you know, sometimes the parents, you know, of broken homes, or even not broken, but, you know, the conditioning comes from like the mother who, you know, shields her child from an abusive father, and, you know, attempts to create this plot of like the good or bad. So we're really looking at this like gate as the darkness of like what parents choose, what role, you know, parents and children choose. You know, this could be the father that like showers their son or daughter with gifts but doesn't really give much attention to the wife. You know, there's these weird situations that occur, you know, as we get older in our family lives that are fucking awkward. And it creates this whole like vision of how we see relationships, and the better, you know, we see these things with clarity, it doesn't have to stay with us in our personal relationships, which yeah, nothing is perfect, but yeah, we have to alter our taste, you know, for the things that didn't traumatize us. So we're not attracting those things, into our lives because of our mindset, because of our auric field emanating these things, these traumas, this baggage. So if you have gate 18, you're a perfectionist, like the personal aspect of it is that you look at yourself and you look at your work and you're never happy with it. And it's a good and bad thing because you're always striving for the next bigger thing. You're, tearing something up and making something better out of it. So it is great as long as you still keep creating and you can be easy on yourself. And we do have the entire channel of judgment this transit at the very last day, I think October 1st. Yeah. So we have also a shit ton of intuitive channels this week. This is the most intuitive, week that we've had in a very long time. So we're getting messages left and right through our intuition, through, tingles, sensations, hair standing up on our spine. Your body's trying to tell you something. It's trying to deliver a message in real time. And we do want to watch out for those things. Yeah, the channel of judgment is the type of people that are gifted critics. They see the flaws in order to be gods, in their own way, like an orchestral conductor, like it takes a lot of skill, it takes a lot of work. You have to be dissatisfied with yourself to get to that place, because that you are striving to use this as fuel so you can be better and show up better. This is the director, the gymnast, the athlete. And lasting improvement is possible. But it is a life of challenge. It definitely very much is a life of challenge. So, yeah, we got the channel of acceptance, charisma, the brainwave, channel of power, abstraction, perfected form, awakening, transformation. We got it all this week. Questions of the week. When was the last time you have challenged any authority? And what was the result? Did it feel good despite the consequences? How do you feel about authority? Do they help you have a structure? Or do you feel better being completely individual and sovereign? What is an example of how you were conditioned to believe something and you've broken out of that mold for the betterment of your authentic nature? What aspects of how you were raised are you keeping? What is, maybe it's a recipe, maybe it's the way that your mom cuts like vegetables, or if you worked on cars with your dad, What cycles are you breaking out of now? We have a ton of activation in our spleen. What has your intuition guided you to do? This is a collective gate, so up next we have the well, and I will see you guys next week. So nice to deliver the message.